Welcome to My Generation, brought to you by the South Shore Senior News. I'm Tom Foye, and today's guest is Mark Friedman from Senior Helpers Boston and the South Shore. A couple little highlights on Mark. Mark holds an MBA from Carnegie Mellon University, now the Tepper School of Business, with high distinction and a Bachelor of Arts in Economics from the University of Virginia. Mark additionally is a certified dementia practitioner. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Oh, good. And I was going to ask you, whatever possessed you to get into the healthcare business?
Well, originally I got into it as an investment in an area that I thought was critical. And that conclusion came to me, after getting involved in my local community and my synagogue. Our synagogue, was very bimodal. You had young families and you had older individuals. And I was watching how the older individuals were struggling to age in place. We had a number of folks that were, well above 85. When I was president of the synagogue, I probably in 4 years, went to over 100, 200 funerals, all in. Of just people aging, but struggling, getting mixed advice, getting, some care, but probably not enough. And when a friend was starting to think about opening an elder care business, I said, I'll back you. And I was one of the financial backers in that. Fast forward, 1 year, and I had my first attempt at trying to retire from management consulting, and I stepped into the business to help grow it. And I developed a passion for it. And then in 2013, we split that business in half because we had just too much geography to try to run it as one business. And that started my individual journey. And the more time I spent in it, and the more I saw what was going on, the more committed I was to, doing something that others weren't doing in the elder care space in our local area.
Well, I know that you're an advocate for getting everybody licensed in the industry. How is that working out so far?
Well, the state does not license or regulate home care agencies. It takes about 30 minutes to open an agency, and it takes about 15 minutes to get credentialed to run a Massachusetts criminal background check, which is the only requirement of an aide. There's no training requirements, no certification requirements in any form in home care. That to me is a huge problem. And a number of years ago, myself and a couple of others, lobbied for a level of licensing, but we couldn't get it done. So I decided to take a different tack and build an agency that had standards higher than any level of licensing standard they would ever put out in the state. And in that way, I can provide the best care with quality caregivers and enable people to age in place, more successfully than those who kind of play fast and loose and take advantage of the lack of regulation.
Why do you suppose they don't want to get it regulated and have people licensed? I think back years ago when I was an auto appraiser for insurance companies, I had to have a license in Massachusetts to look at a wrecked car. Now, when you think about healthcare, that's a lot more sophisticated and a lot more involved. Why don't they want to license the practitioners?
I don't think there's budget on one side. The assisted living industry is regulated by the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, not the Department of Public Health. And while there's, interest in making sure we all have a certain standard, there's no ability to really implement that with the resources that they have available. So, it kind of is what it is, unfortunately. I know when I got into the business, there were 13 national brands, franchises, if you will. Now there's almost 60. Wow. So it's a huge growth industry, and in the absence of meaningful standards and regulation, it lends itself to a buyer beware. And customers should. We get calls from clients and they try to compare based on the hourly rate. And you can't, because you don't know what's behind that hourly rate. Are there nurses? Are the caregivers certified home health aides or certified nursing assistants? Is there a formal care plan done by a clinician? Is there a social worker, on staff? What sort of labor and wage requirements are in place? for the agency to be run well. All of these things are critically important, yet everybody assumes there's a level of regulation so that the only difference really would be price. And that's just not the case.
Wow, that's amazing. If the person, say I wanted to go out and open up like a senior helpers, what do I have to have in order to do that?
You have to register as a business to do, a business, get a license to do business in the state of Massachusetts. You have to get certified to run a quarry, and you have to get liability insurance.
Okay.
This area cannot use contract employees, no 1099 employees. It's not possible to deliver care and legally, provide that type of employment in there. So, you have to set up, employment. Your caregivers need to be full employees, whether they're full-time or part-time, it doesn't matter.
Do you have to have a registered nurse on board at all, or?
No.
Nothing.
I have two. But there's no requirement to have any nurse, any social worker, any clinician, and most agencies don't.
Wow. So you're above and beyond. You have two nurses where you don't even have to have them. So
I have two nurses. I have a master's in social work on staff that's also a geriatric care manager. All my internal office staff, come from a clinical background. Either they were caregivers. My HR person's a former caregiver. My schedulers are former caregivers or have worked in the healthcare field for a number of years. I was probably the least experienced clinically of our team. I've since gotten my certified dementia practitioner certification. I've gotten my certified agent in place specialist designation from the National Association of Home Builders. And I've written, researched, and blogged on the topic of elder care for, I think, 5 years now.
Yeah, I remember when you had a book published. I remember that.
Yeah, that's it's on over my shoulder here. That's the cover of it, available on Amazon. And that's just my lessons learned and observations from 7 years, 8 years in the industry. And I'm surprised at how relevant people tell me that the information is. It covers things from, what are the things you should be most concerned about? Who's a caregiver? What does good care look like and good care management look like in there? And people find it quite helpful.
Mark, touch on that a little bit. Like, say a person needs, they have a loved one at home that's going through dementia or Alzheimer's. What should they look for if they're going to have somebody at home and help them?
So, when we crafted our approach to dementia care, we looked to the assisted living industry for their standards. I happen to have a staffing license. Our business has a staffing license. So we actually provide staff to the assisted living industry. So we want to meet those same criteria. All of our caregivers are fully dementia trained. They're all CNAs and or home health aides, HHAs. They go through a 6-unit dementia training course, which ranges from an understanding of the disease and its progression to activities, interests, managing anxiety and escalation, and a number of other topics on that, so that they're all, and that's classroom training that we do in our office. And then when they have a client, we stratify where that person is on a continuum using the Senior GEMS program. So what does good look like when you're providing dementia care? One is training of the aides, very important. The second thing is, what's the supervision of those aides? Is there a clinician that understands that disease at a level of detail that can provide the coaching on how to manage? Dementia is a medical diagnosis, but it's a behavioral intervention until toward the end of life. There's no medication that really does anything. That's, they're all under evaluation or testing, and they're very helpful in the very early stage, but it catches up within a year.
Wow.
Right. So it's all about the techniques. It's all about understanding. It's all about, understanding what that person's going through and meeting them where they are, enabling them to do what they can do and not overly restrict them and frustrate them.
Wow. If my memory serves me correctly, you also, when you hire people, you provide training for them as well, even if they come to you with experience.
Yeah. So all of our aides, as I said, are CNAs or HHAs. When they're hired by us, we go through a number of training units. We go through an elder abuse training, bloodborne pathogen and infectious disease. We do a training on fall risk. We have kind of a learning lab set up in the office got a bathtub, a life-weighted dummy, a slide bench, walkers, wheelchair, Hoyer lift. We make sure they understand how to use all of those devices properly. Gait belts, understand where to stand when they're going upstairs, downstairs, those types of things. And then we do the 6-unit dementia course with them. And so with that, they're able to handle just about anything. And many of them already had those skills, but we're able to verify those skills before we put them out in the field.
Oh, that is excellent. So that is why you have an excellent reputation in the industry.
I do believe we have a strong reputation. We're not perfect. No agency is perfect. No aid is going to be perfect. You're constantly trying to find that balance between fit and function when you're placing an aid with a client. You know, we know all of our aides have the functional skills because we hired for that. But fit is a different issue. Personality type, you know, matters. You know, is it a male? Is it a female? Is it somebody that, you know, interacts a lot? Or is it somebody that wants, you know, the caregiver just to be there for when they need it? And so you have to find that right balance.
Oh, excellent. Hey, for the listening audience, if somebody wants to get a hold of Mark Friedman or Senior Helpers, what are they going to do?
They can call the office at 617-500-6999. They can send an email to the office email at boston@seniorhelpers.com. Or they can, you know, just call and ask me to call them back.
Well, that is great. Listen, you have a stellar reputation in the industry, but there's also another side to you. The other side that I find really exciting and interesting. The 67 Camaro 396 board 60 over to a 408 and your 48 Chevy hot rod pickup. Tell me about them. How's the pickup now that you've got that?
The pickup, they're both great. Pickup's a little rougher ride than the Camaro. So for long journeys, the Camaro's, you know, my go-to. I developed a passion of cars from my dad. When cars would come out, my dad would take me to the dealerships and we'd go see them, look them over, talk about them. And whenever we were in the car together, we'd look if it was coming at us or going the other way. What is it? Could I figure out what it was by looking at the front end or the back end? And, you know, it stuck with me. And when I was about 3.5, I sat in a new Camaro in a showroom, red convertible. And it just took me, you know, 50 some years to get it.
Wow, that's cool. You know, my friend has a 67 Camaro Super Sport RS he's had since 1975, and he still has it.
That's great. That's great. The other thing I really like about the old cars is the old car community. It spans generations. There are 20-year-old kids getting into it. They're, you know, late 50s, 60-year-olds like me, they're in it. And there's some, you know, real enthusiasts, you know, they're 80 plus. And you talk to them at the car meetups, and it's really interesting. I had a really unique experience at one show. I had my hood open, and the Camaro is fairly shiny under the hood. And a gentleman walked by at kind of a gruff T-shirt, pair of shorts, Leatherman strapped on his belt. He's looking at something, and he says, "Something's not right there. I'll be right back." Comes back with a fuel pressure regulator to put it on the car. He goes, "The way your Holly carb was set up, you know, it wasn't going to be the right setup. You had a pressure problem." He took out his Leatherman, he cut the fuel hose, he put the regulator on and put it back together in the course of 10 minutes. And I asked him, you know, about himself, because talking to folks is one of the things that I love at these car shows. He was a mechanic in the Vietnam War. Wow. And he worked on airplanes and Jeeps and whatever they had him do. And just hearing his story. And I think that's one of the things I love about the business that we do is we're letting those stories come to life. Our caregivers, you know, talk to our clients and they tell them their stories. You know, when I go and visit or my nurse goes and visits, we hear their stories. We had a gentleman that was an Olympic hockey player that we provided some care from. My lead nurse, Robin, played hockey in college and almost went pro. And so they had a great bonding experience. Finding those nuggets of connection is one of the most amazing things about what I do. And it just brings real joy to me when I'm able to have those conversations with our clients. And it's one of the things I love about, you know, my car hobby. It's old and young, it spans generation. It's not about your job, it's about your car, it's about your journey.
The Endicott Car Show is coming up. Do you go to that each year?
I try to, haven't been in a few years. But I'm hoping to go this year. I've got some travel this summer, so that kind of gets in the way once in a while. But I go as often as possible. And my youngest is going to be home this summer. Last year between their junior and senior year at college, so I'm hoping she'll take one car and I'll take the other. We can get them both to the shows.
No, that'd be great. If you're going to go, let me know in advance, and I will come out that day, because I would like to see if the gentleman still shows up with the GTO I sold him.
Okay.
The guy that has
Okay.
my,
There are a couple. Marshfield is another one that's good. And in addition to Marshfield, there's the big one in Medfield.
Yeah, you also have the one at the what is it, Cabela's, or the one in Fox?
Bass Pro Shops.
Bass Pro Shop.
Every other Thursday. It actually starts this week.
Yeah, I have some friends that go to there. Roy Dutta takes off. He goes down there with his F-85 wagon.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful car.
I don't usually go to that one because a lot of people aren't real careful around the cars, and you have purses slamming into them or kids, accidentally scratching them, and a little more controlled environment than a parking lot sometimes.
Well, I know that Endicott is pretty much the only show this gentleman takes the GTO to, because I'm 68, so he would have to be in his mid 80s today.
Yeah. The one at Endicott Estate or the one at Endicott College?
The one at Endicott's Estate.
Estate, yeah. I haven't heard definitively if that one's going to happen this year.
Oh, wow. Well, I hope it does, because I'd like to go.
Me too.
But anyway, this is the interesting side of you, the hot rods and the cars. You got any other cars you were thinking of buying or purchasing? Or?
I'm thinking about getting rid of the truck actually and getting something else. I'm capped at 2 because my wife says that's all the space we have, and she's upset enough that she doesn't get to use the garage.
Oh, I see.
So for right now, it's 2.
Yeah. What are you looking at? Anything in particular?
I love the 57 Bel-Air.
Yeah.
I love the 65, 66, 67 vet convertible.
Oh yeah, I had 257s.
Those 2 are probably the highest on the list. If I did another pickup truck, I wouldn't make it, all pretty and shiny. I just kind of let the natural patina and focus on the engine and the suspension instead.
Oh. Well, it sounds like you've got some ideas out there for cars. So, but anyways, listen, Mark, I want to thank you for being on the show. This is fun. And anyways, thank you. And I'll be talking to you soon. You're very welcome. I look forward to it. If there's anything the readers of South Shore Senior News need, they're free to call the office. They'll see in the next edition if they'd like a copy of the book. There's a number they can call, and we'll make sure they get one. Yeah, that's great. Hey, listen, thanks for being on the show. And folks, you've been listening to My Generation, brought to you by the South Shore Senior News. I'm Tom Foye, and I am saying goodbye. Mark, thanks again. Thank you.